Hey, and welcome back, friends. I'm going to apologize right off the top and say you might hear my dogs at some point during this video. I apologize for that. They live here too, so we're going to do our best to all coexist. But one of the great things about this tube amp hobby or business or affliction, whatever level you're at with that, I know I have kind of all three going on, is the willingness of everybody involved in it to share information and techniques and get everybody educated on how to do this and how to do it safely and what to do. And there have been a lot of people over the years that I've either used their websites or watched their YouTube channels and that have taught me a ton. And I'm going to say thanks to all of you for keeping your websites up and for making content for YouTube channels and things like that. They've taught me a lot, and I know they've taught a lot of other people a lot about tube amp building, repair, and just enjoyment and entertainment. You guys, the entertainment value is immense. There's a number of reference sites out there that I use a lot, and by reference I mean they have data, tube data, schematics, formulas for figuring out voltage, current, and resistance, things, Ohm's law, that type of stuff. And I keep a lot of these sites bookmarked because I refer to them so often. I actually have a laptop that sits next to my workbench, and I'm frequently on it when I'm working, referring to things. And I thought these sites that I use a lot might be helpful to other people. And so I've divided these into sites that I'm either on a daily basis or very frequently, several times a week probably, and other sites that I'm on not as often. And by no means is this an exhaustive list. You're going to say, but there's X, Y, and Z who have YouTube channels that you didn't mention today. But no, I didn't include a lot of them because if I did, this video would go on forever. But what I'm focusing on today is mostly sites that are good for people who are starting out, either building, restoring, or fixing amps, and sort of base level information and up. Some of it does get pretty involved. But for the most part, if you're starting out, these are websites that you probably will want to at least have on your radar. If you have sites that you refer to in your tube amp endeavors that aren't mentioned here, please list them in the comments. I've got a feeling I'm going to end up making a follow-up to this, so maybe we can include them in the next one, and certainly they'll be good for me because I don't know about them. Also, if you enjoy the video, please give a like and consider subscribing to the channel if you'd like to see more content like this. I've talked long enough. Let's go to the computer and check these sites out. If we are going to start at the start, we've got to start with Uncle Doug. Uncle Doug has run a YouTube channel for longer than I've been building amps. Actually, he was one of the people I learned the most from initially. His videos are simple and easily understood. I think the guy was a teacher at some point, and they're very entertaining, and he does a lot of old restorations of old tube amps as well as builds. The information here is just fantastic. If you are new to tube amp building or interested in tube amp building, the first thing I would do is go look at his videos, and certainly about the core pieces of a tube amp, the power section, the phase inverter, the power tubes. He has videos on each of those, and they're great. Anybody can understand them, even me. And he does a tremendous job of explaining what he's doing, and I enjoy them very much. And a lot of us have probably watched these videos. A lot of us have learned from him. A big thanks to Uncle Doug for all he's done over the years. The second resource that I use, and this one pretty much on a daily basis, is EL34 World. I believe it's run by a guy named Doug Hoffman. Thank you to him for providing all this information. He has amp kits and parts and everything for sale
So it's kind of a one-stop shop in some ways. He has not only the parts but the schematics for all these. This is really the heart of what I use on his website. These are listings of schematics from just about every manufacturer, and let's just go into the Fender ones real quick. You can go down and find just about any Fender schematic here. Let's just jump into, say, a basement 10, whatever. There you go, and they're all there. It's really a fantastic resource. Let's go jump back there. Just about anything you want. Valco is right there. Supro also, related. Watkins and Wim also related, but different schematics for both. Marshall, of course, right there. You have Gibson, tons of Gibson schematics. I mean, just fantastic. Marshall, there we go. I mean, just about everything you need with Marshall. So really a fantastic resource. And again, thanks to Doug Hoffman for keeping all that up out there. Let's jump to the next one. Valve Wizard. This one's run by a guy named Merlin Blencow, and he also, thank you to Merlin for all the information he keeps on the internet. Obviously has some books, as you can see, that he sells, but he has here's his valve amp stuff over on the left hand side, and he explains a lot of how tube amps work. Now, I will say that this is not really, in most cases, this is not really beginner information. In fact, it took me years to kind of learn the math to do a lot of the things he does on here. For instance, we're looking at power supply design, and we're looking at a lot of math here, and he does explain it really well. There's just a lot of information here. But, if you want to know anything about phase inverters and how they affect an amp, and using different ones and the amount of gain that's involved in each type of design, you can also look at preamp stages, from the simple to, something like this, which is a cathode follower, a little more involved, as you can see with the curve charts and everything. But great information, lots of it, and again, it's all out there, and he's done a terrific job of keeping it available. The next one is, this is another one I use almost on a daily basis, and this looks like a very simple interface here, but a guy named Frank Phillips, and I hope he's still with us, and a huge thanks to him and everybody who hosts mirror sites for this website. But this is the biggest repository I know of tube data sheets. And if you need a tube data sheet, they've got just about everything is in here. For instance, let's look at go down to like 6v6s. You can see the breadth of this. This is an incredible amount of information. So 6v6 has, I don't know, it looks like maybe 6, 8, oh wow, like 20 listings there, and from different manufacturers, RCA, Tungsol, Kinrad, whatever. They're here, and I use tube data sheets a lot, and these are a spectacular resource, especially when it's a tube, say an old Soviet tube that I need a data sheet for. A lot of those are there. But anywhere, around the world, this is just great information to have. 68 I've talked about in a previous video. There's a data sheet for that, everything. And again, this is radiomuseum.org. I don't know the people in charge of it. But just about any tube, again, you can find a reference for on here. And what's cool about this is they offer the sort of cross-reference to each tube, which shows you what you can replace them with, whether it's pin compatible or electrically compatible. It's fantastic information. Plus, they also offer data sheets and diagrams of these tubes, but also in a lot of cases a small circuit that shows you at least how to hook it up on a single-ended basis if it's a power tube, and if it's a triode, maybe you need amplification, also how to hook those up. But it gives some resistor values that generate the correct amount of power and things like that. So it's really great. The other thing that is terrific about Radio Museum is if you cannot find a schematic for something on EL34 World, and there's a good chance you're going to find it, and particularly if you're looking for old PA schematics and things like that, radio schematics, Radio Museum in a lot of cases is your go-to place. I just became a member of this because I use it so much. It's very inexpensive. I think it was like $25. So for this kind of a reference, in fact, let's just type in Masco and see what you get. And you get a bunch of information. There's an MA25N. There's the PA amp itself. There's a schematic for it. And some of these you can actually download. It's limited, but you can download to your computer a few a day. Thanks to Radio Museum for all the work they do to keep this stuff online. The next one, and I've saved kind of the best, or I think one of the most valuable, for last, is Rob Robinette's site. Rob's site is kind of like Merlin Blinkow's site, except for people like me who are what I would call math challenged or math averse. Rob does a spectacular job of explaining how these amps work in diagram and pictures. Show me a picture and how it works, and also there you go. This is how the signal travels through a champ, for instance. And also for the people who want to do load lines and stuff like that, there's also that information in here. He's got mods of different amps, how to build an amp, where to start. It's a rabbit hole that once you start in on this stuff, there's so much information here that's just interesting and worthwhile to read that you could spend a lot of days or nights just going through it. He mentions also Doug Hoffman there. One of the things that EL34 World Doug Hoffman does is build boards for amps. So anyway, I can't say enough about people like Rob Robinette. There's some 5E3 mods. There's a whole list of them. Everybody should build a 5E3 at some point if you want to build. So thanks to Rob for keeping all this and just adding to it all the time. It does a tremendous job of explaining everything. So those are the top resources that I use almost on a daily basis. Now, I have also an honorable mention list, and these are the sites that I use intermittently, but when I need them, I've got them bookmarked and I go to them. And we'll start here. This is a backup site for schematics called Schematic Heaven. A lot of you are probably familiar with it. I don't believe it has not been updated since 2006, and unfortunately I believe Larry, whoever it was who started the site, is no longer with us, and that's probably why it hasn't been updated, but somebody's keeping it running, and there's still a ton of good information on here. He also has some mods. Those are worth a look. The other thing that you might find here are PA and hi-fi PA conversions. There's some Bogan conversions and some things like that. There's a lot of good information here, even beyond the schematics and the normal stuff. How about effects? Effects schematics. That stuff like this is just fantastic to have. And there's a lot of pedal builders out there. I'm not one of them. That's a rabbit hole that I have not gone down intentionally, but I know there's a lot of people out there building pedals. So you've got the schematics right here at Schematic Heaven. Another one that I will talk about is a site called Bill's Antiques Radios, or RadioRemember.org. The piece of this that has come in most handy for me is the restoration tips, hints, and kinks, and particularly determining output transformer impedance, things like this. Again, Bill has done a fantastic job of explaining a lot of this math and in a way that even people like me can get it. I refer to this when I find old transformers and things that I really don't know the turns ratios and things in, and I don't know exactly what the impedance of them is and things like that. I come here and I read up on how to test them, and I test them, and they usually come out right. He also has a chart that shows the plate load resistance for various tubes, what kind of transformer works well with them, and also different color codes for wiring. The other thing that is really handy, and you run across these in old gear, is like old capacitor. When you find old molded capacitors with the dots on them, how to read those things. So I have to refer back to this whenever I run across those, if they're still good, and frequently they are. But yeah, it's great information like that. You have resistor color codes again. These are from the old resistors that with the dots, the painted resistors, things like that. It's information on old electronics, and it's great to have. Next one is just a little sheet that I ran across at one point, or it was recommended on a forum or something. This is done by a guy named Mike at mdbventures.com. It is a list of rectifier parameters. These are all 5 volt over here, and these are 6 volt, and then you have miscellaneous down here. But you also have 5U4 compatible tubes, 5Y3 tubes, that are compatible, at least pin compatible and sort of electrically compatible, and old stuff, type 83s, 80s 5Z3s. And I refer to this chart a lot when I find old tubes and stuff. What does this rectifier do? And how much amperage does it draw, and how many volts does it drop, and how much power does it put out? So there's notes on all this stuff off to the side, and it is a great little resource, and it's just one of those things I keep a bookmark of. It's fantastic to have. This is another one that I refer to particularly early on when I was building tube amps. Hammond's Design Guide for Rectifier Use is a great resource when you're starting to put together power sections for tube amps. Shows you how to basically do the math on using diodes, full wave bridge rectifiers, and you can actually do tube rectification math with this. It's just a great thing to have. It's one of those things that you probably just should print out and stick, on the wall next to your workbench. It's a solid resource. And once you kind of get in your head the number 1.4, which is a multiplier for your power, and usually about 1.2 for a rectifier tube, but 1.4 for solid state, then some of this becomes academic. But it's a good thing to have, and again, when you're starting out, it's a great little resource. This is another one, and again, for the math averse, these are calculators. This is at ampbooks.com, and first of all, ampbooks.com's got a lot of really good amp books, especially if you're building tube amps. They have a fantastic selection. A guy named Richard Keenel. Hope I pronounced that right. Keenel, I would say. But anyway, cathode bypass capacitor calculator to help you with gain and things like that. Coupling capacitor. There's just all kinds of really great calculators in here. I'm sure you'll find one that you can use or that's useful to you. But yeah, it's another terrific resource. Every so often we run across speakers and other components that we want to know a little bit more about. Weber Speakers has had this speaker code, manufacturer code list forever, and this is one of those I keep a bookmark of. Anytime I get speakers, I want to know who made them. Usually the code's on there, and I can find out. And if I need to find more information, or if I can find more information in an old catalog or something like that, at least I know who made it. So that's always good to have. There's other components that also use these numbers that we can certainly trace down in old catalogs and things like that. Here's another handy site. This is a tube cross-reference and selection guide. Basically, it's tube specs separated by the different kinds of tubes, and it's basically just data charts. One of the ones that I find handy frequently is triodes with diodes. For instance, if you've ever used a 6SQ7 or 6AT6, 6AV6, you can see over here. This gives all the specs for these, and it's handy if you acquire some tubes, say at a rummage sale or a swap meet, that you want to know more about real quickly. This is a good place to do that. But the other thing is if you actually need a tube for a certain thing. For instance, I may have a 7-pin preamp opening that I need to fill, and I need something that's got fairly high gain. So I come here and I look down the 7-pin mini list. I find a 6AT6 or a 6AV6 that works really well. You can find the plate voltages and the specs and the heater draw and things like that. You have everything there. It's another good resource for rectifier tubes. Certain pentodes and power tubes are in here also. Just a quick lookup of tubes. This is the place to come. There's the power tubes. There we go. 6BQ5, EL34. 2A3s, they're all called out. These are common ones that everybody uses. A lot of data here, and this is if you want to know if you can kind of use it for a certain job, then this is the place to look. Here's another reference. I actually have printed this out and I keep it on my workbench, but just for a quick look, bookmark it. This is a capacitor reference. Sometimes things are listed in microfarads, sometimes they're listed in nanofarads, picofarads, and this translates all of those into whatever you'd like to be. I usually want this translated into microfarads. It's a great thing to have. This is done by a company called Just Radios, and they also have a fantastic selection of capacitors for sale, capacitor and resistor kits both. But it's a handy thing to keep bookmarked. And we're coming to our last one, which is another rabbit hole, world radio history. And this one is great for a variety of reasons. First of all, the breadth of all this stuff. And this is somebody published by a gentleman named David E.F. Gleason. Thanks to him for doing this. It is, they used to put out all kinds of radio and electronics magazine, and this is an astounding worldwide, not just U.S., but worldwide collection of all these things. And the one thing that I find very handy is actually catalogs of old gear. Sometimes you can find, if you don't know the specs of a speaker or a transformer or something, you can find here for instance, these are studio tube gear. These are all gates or transmitters, communications. Gate stuff is crazy good for old studios. RCA transmitter transmitting catalogs. Here are a bunch of technical manuals and receiving tube manuals. Here's RC14 from RCA. That is one of those things that is just great to have. I've scratched the surface of this and just barely looked in it, what's in it. It's not only a great resource, but just a fun thing to look through.
All right, friends. Well, there you have it. Hopefully these sites are helpful, and there were some on there that you weren't aware of that are new to you. I always like learning new things, so I hope you do too. And again, I appreciate you watching. Thanks for your time. And if you like the video, please leave us a like. And then by us, I mean me and the channel. There's my dogs. I don't know if you can hear them or not. But also consider subscribing to the channel. So until the next video, go build something.